Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let's see here. All right. Good Shabbos. Hey, Sherry. Okay, let me put on a spotlight here. Oops, sorry. Let me take that up there. Spotlight for everybody. Okay, there we go. That should work. Sherry, hi. Nice to see you. Okay. And Shabbat Shalom, Warren and Marcia and Lee. Sorry if it's muting you right away. We'll unmute at the very end here. But let's see. We'll take that away. So Shabbat Shalom. It's strange, right, to be 1 week away from going back to the temple, and it feels sort of full circle, because we really started actually in virtual space before we moved to the church, right? It goes back that long, so gotten sort of used to this reality, but also still a little strange, and as you see, weird backgrounds and what have you. But nonetheless, really very happy to be able to do this, and to, the unusual experience of a rabbi davening and leading from home. So it's nice to be able to know that as soon as we're done, my Oneg Shabbat is next door. So, that's a really lovely thing. So we're going to get started right away. We'll jump into our service. And again, welcome all of our friends on Zoom and those that are watching at home. You won't be able to see it in the camera later, but I'll show you that they are real. I have my Shabbat candles here. If you happen to have candles at home, you're welcome to join with me. We're on page 120 in our Sidurim, in our prayer books. Just going to light candles over here. Hopefully not light our house in the process. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. So in a second, we'll get started with Kabbalat Shabbat on page 130, but I'm just going to ask a favor of our friends on Zoom in particular. I hope the audio sounds good. If for any reason it doesn't, please just put something in the chat, let me know. Otherwise, I really have no good way of knowing for sure. Sounds good on my end, but you'll let me know otherwise. So we're on page 130, beginning again, Kabbalat Shabbat, very top of the page. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena ladonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena ladonai. Naria, naria, letzoi shenu, nekadma fana betodah. Naria, naria, letzoi shenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena ladonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena ladonai. We'll turn now to page 131, Shiru Ladonai, at the very top there, called Shiru Ladonai. Perfect timing. Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. Shiru ladonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru ladonai, kol haaretz. Shiru ladonai, baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. Shiru ladonai, baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. We'll turn now to page 132, Or Zarua, the very bottom of the page. Or Zarua lahatzadik, ulehishrei lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, ule yishrei lev simcha. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, vehodu lezecher kodsho. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, vehodu lezecher kodsho. You see me occasionally trying to hold back a laugh. It's because I could hear my son on the other side of the door trying to sing along, which was very cute and, kind of hard to ignore. But maybe they'll make an appearance later on. We'll see. Zamru Ladonai, top of page 134. Zamru Ladonai Bechinor, Bechinor Bekol Zimra, Bachatzotzrot Vekol Shofar, Hariu Lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Yiram Hayamum Lo, Tevehel Veyoshveba, Neharot Imcha Uchaf Yachad, Harim Yiraneinu, Lifnei Adonai Kiva, Lishbot haaretz, Yishbot tevel betzedek, Ve'amim mesharim, Yiram hayamum lo, Tevel ve'yoshveva, Neharot imcha uchaf yachad, Harim Yiraneinu. We're now on page 135, Romemu, which is the last paragraph in Hebrew. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. We'll turn now to L'chadodi on page 138, and we will, as always, or more recently in recent years, do the 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 9th paragraphs. Again, page 138. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shemu tiferet ve'litilam. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha, meherosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. 5th paragraph. התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. We'll turn now to page 140. We're at the very bottom of the Hebrew where it just indents in the middle of the page. Tzadik katama yifrach, kerez babanon iske shetulim bebeit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim merananim Yehu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo avlata bo. We'll turn now to the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Hitkadal v'hitkadash shemei rabba, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich machutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'galaha, uv'izman kariv v'himeru. Amen. Yeshmei rabba mevarach, le'alam li'al me'al maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shemei dekudsha b'richu, le'la min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, ve'imeru. Amen. Chatzi Kaddish, is followed by the Baruch Hu on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam vahed. Okay, if you're standing, please be seated. We're on page 148 in the English at the very bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai Tzvaot shemo, El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai Amariv Aravim. We'll read now on the bottom of page 151 in English. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Ki ehem chayinu ve'orech yaminu v'hem nege yomam v'layla v'avatcha tasir mimenu li'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam be'shiftecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'shofbecha u'vkumecha ושרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. We'll read together now on page 157, the very top of the page. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. That wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt. That there is a better place, a promised land. That the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. That there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. We'll turn now to page 158, Michamoch at the very top of the page. Yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yabai ba 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 ba, yabai bye bim bam. Yai bye ba 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 ya ba bye bye bim bam mi chamocha bailim Adonai mi kamocha nedar bakodesh norat hilot osefele norat hilot osefele ya bye bye bim bim bam ya bye bye bim bam Ya bye bye bim 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 bam ya bye bye bim bam ya bye ba 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 ya bye bye bim bam ya bye ba 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 ya bye bye bim bam Malchutecha ra'u vanecha bokeam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam zeli anu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגולו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל. We'll read together on the top of page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Hashkivenu is on the top of page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu Chayim, Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu leChayim, Ushmor Tzeiteinu, Uvoeinu, leChayim u'Shalom, Me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu leChayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. As we turn to Vishamru on page 162. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berich olam, einai beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, Oti leolam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashevim. Shabbat, Shabbat vayinafash. In a moment, we'll begin the Amidah together on page 164, and then from that point, as always, to continue silently. As we are in our Zoom space, we want to make sure that we're giving ample time. It's a little bit harder to read the room than it is in real life. So we're going to give about 4 or 5 minutes to make sure no one feels rushed. I'm going to turn my screen off. For those on the Zoom, you can choose what makes you feel most comfortable. Those watching at home, same idea. But as always, we'll begin together on page 164. So please join with me. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Ose shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol Yehoshvei Tevel. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371 to offer our Mishaberach, our healing prayer for this evening. Before we sing together on page 371, I'm going to read our Mishaberach list for this evening. Tonight we're thinking of Bentzi Tepper, Allison Luckman, Malka Bat Chaya Sura, Michael Klinghoffer, Ame and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sivia Devora Bat Francis, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, Barbara Kushner, David Kyle Klopman, Lorraine Davis, Devora Batsima, Rebecca Snyder, Jeffrey Miller, Shelley Lyman, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Karen Layton, Debbie Bookvar, Carol Javna, Lori Nisanoff, Rebecca Rubin, Deborah and John Fogarty, Kate Kessler, Hilda Mintz, John Mahoney, Kim Birnbaum, Moshe Ben Yosef, Moshe Jakovowitz, Ann Baker, David Ben Barzilai, Dr. Samuel Moskowitz, Alan Weinstein, Tikva Bat Avraham, Andrea Klausner, and Jake Curie. In addition to those names that I just read, if you have any names to share, if you're on the Zoom with us, you can add them in the chat, those that are watching at home, to either say the names of your loved ones out loud or hold them in your hearts. And invite all of us to join together on page 371 as we sing together our Mishaberach in the middle of the page. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As I said, this is sort of an unusual space, right? It's our last Shabbat before returning home, but it's not in a physical space at all. So as I was saying to the first people that got on, it seems actually very full circle, because we actually began this reality before we even moved into the church, in which we were experiencing the early days of COVID. And obviously we've learned a lot, we've grown a lot. We appreciate, I think, all the more the opportunity to be able to pray together in person. But I think we also can appreciate the fact that there is this remarkable technology that has allowed us to do precisely what we do best, which is to build community and to celebrate our wonderful religion. So I want to speak a little bit tonight on matters both personal and, I hope, both religious and national. So the first is some of you may know, today is my birthday. I'm not fishing for birthday compliments, I promise. This is not a sermon about my birthday in that traditional sense, although I appreciate it very much. And it happens to be there was another big birthday this week, which is celebrated in the land of Israel, Yom HaAtzmaut, and not just any birthday, 75th birthday, which is really quite remarkable. Okay, and none of us should lose sight of the fact that every year that Israel celebrates its birthday is not always, and then for most of its history, has not been guaranteed. Right? It is a celebration, as it is for human beings. Right? To make it another, circle around the sun feels wonderful, but it's also in many ways, right, a moment of reflection, a cause for consideration, as I am turning 42, not quite 75, but not quite so far from it either, and feeling closer by the minute, I think, to that kind of thing. So it got me thinking this week a little bit about this idea of birthdays and some odd ways in which I want to connect my birthday to the land of Israel in hopefully the least egotistical way possible. We'll see how I do. So the first thing is to just speak about what may be a unique phenomena to me, but something that I think is not just me. In that, as we get older and we have birthdays and people get presents for us on our birthdays, there is something of a gap between that experience of being a child, right, and having that image in your mind of what you want and getting what you want and feeling that, versus what tends to happen as you get older, which is your loved ones, knowing you, give you gifts that they think are things that you will enjoy, right, or are reflective of who they believe you to be or think you to be or whatever it might be. And those are always very beloved, very heartfelt gifts. But sometimes they're just slightly adjacent, right? They're not quite what we actually want. They are in the realm of things that we like or whatever it might be, but it's not actually the thing we want in the way when we were kids and we can articulate in that way. And I think a lot of times, right, as Israel is celebrating its birthday and as we especially are living in the diaspora, right, what is the gift that we can give to the state of Israel in celebration? Right? What do we give back to the land of Israel? What do we give to it as an offering of how we feel about it? Right? If we're going to personalize or anthropomorphize the state of Israel into a being, right? How would we relate to this experience of giving, and how do we manage to give a gift, as it were, of the heart that isn't a superficial gift, right? It isn't a surface level thing, but something that actually goes the step beyond, the one that acknowledges really at the depths what the state of Israel is in the way that we hope when we give a gift to our loved ones, in which we are acknowledging not what we want, but what we hope for that person. So if I were to suggest, and this is a hubris on my part, but it is my birthday, so what the heck. If I were to make a suggestion to all of us to consider, right, what is something that we can give to the state of Israel on this 75th birthday, especially at a time, perhaps more so than in any moment, certainly in my lifetime, in which there is the greatest amount of strain palpable between the state of Israel and diaspora Jewry, right? How do we find a way to bridge that gap a bit? So call me old-fashioned, call me a rabbi, but I actually think learning and books are actually surprisingly helpful in this case, right? Thinking is surprisingly helpful. But where does one begin, right? With a topic as large as the topic of the state of Israel and the thing that gave it its reality, the thing we refer to as Zionism. So some of you may be familiar with this book. My guess is not as many. I first came across it actually when I attempted to take, quote-unquote, an easy class in college by taking an Intro to Judaism class. Little did I know how much I didn't know about my religion from an academic standpoint. But one of the books that was provided then, and I have since had in various other courses, including rabbinical school, was written by Rabbi Arthur Hertzberg. It is known as The Zionist Idea, written in 1958 and has been reissued a few times over. Just out of curiosity for those on our Zoom, that familiar to anybody at all? Yeah, didn't think so. Unless you've been taking a college level course, chances are it's not the first thing, but it should be on everybody's shelf. And the reason why is not so much about Hertzberg's writing himself. He certainly gives, right, a perspective, but mostly what it is a gathering of primary sources, and in particular the primary sources of the Zionist thinkers who in the end established the baseline, right, the conceptual ideas, the practical realities in the era predating the State of Israel and even predating British Mandate Palestine, right, going back to the 1890s. About as old, quite frankly, as our synagogue, right? We're in similar space in that way. To the first Zionist Congress in Basel, and to the myriad voices and perspectives and ideas of what, quote-unquote, this idea of Zionism ought to be. Hence the reason the book is called The Zionist Idea, because one of its implicit goals is to demonstrate that if there has ever been a singular vision of Zionism, it's not to be found in the writings of the original thinkers. They disagreed on almost every conceivable level. Some understood Zionism as a political movement. Some understood it as a nationalist movement. Some understood it as a cultural movement. Some as a religious movement. And some as other things. right? And sometimes combinations thereof. In many cases, we're so disagreeable on core topics about what the state of Israel ought to be, should it be created, that they, quite frankly, were the next stage away from violence towards each other in many cases. But certainly in the public sphere and private sphere, we're not afraid to demonstrate a vast difference between what this word Zionism meant to them and what a repatriation to our homeland would be, not just in its earliest days, but in its visioning of itself in the future. So studying the primary sources, studying the authors like Ahad Ha'am, Herzl, Max Nordau, right, the big Jabotinsky, right, the great thinkers of those days, and hearing them in their own voice as they are writing in their own milieu, in their own lifetime, is really essential reading before anyone should be able to even conceive of calling them a Zionist. Okay, we tend to come into the conversation many, 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 years later, but we have less and less, I think, an intimate knowledge of what the visionaries of the State of Israel really were thinking, and what ultimately it became and becomes, and what it potentially can be. Now, the most exciting revelation for me today, as I went back to find my original copy and couldn't find it, so I went online, it's probably in one of the pods in storage at the moment, is that they actually reissued the book in 2018, but with a new author-editor who's taken Hertzberg's original work and has added to it and expanded it. And this book is now called The Zionist Ideas, adding that little but very important S at the end of the sentence. And it takes this idea of providing primary sources, but it goes a step further than Hertzberg could have ever envisioned in 1958, which is to think, what would happen in all those successive years? What happens as Zionism finds its grounding in the land of Israel, and now it's not just a vision, it's a reality. So what does one do with that? And of course, the myriad views that one has. During both the period of growth and establishment from 1948, certainly through the major wars of 67 and 73, and then a third stage, which is included in this book, of contemporary voices, including those of the diaspora, right? Including those of, for example, the CCAR, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Reform Movement's Rabbis Union. In other words, the realization that a lot has changed since this original book was together, and even more so since the original thinkers penned their original ideas. Not to mention the fact that in Hertzberg's original book, there is not a single female voice, right? Not one of the really remarkable early Zionist, mid-Zionist, and current Zionist thinkers, nor was there a Mizrahi voice, right? A voice of Jews who did not come from an Ashkenazi background or even a Sephardi background. Okay, so the inclusion of even just these things alone warrants a rereading of the original text. But beyond that, it goes a step further. It puts in front of us the existential question is, and as I said, what is the state of Israel, and what is, for us in the diaspora, our relationship to it? Now, the answer to that question is a question that each of us is going to wrestle with. Each one of us is going to come to perhaps the same conclusions, but more likely very small nuanced differences between what does my Zionism mean versus Kathy's or Sherry's or Deborah's or so on. Okay? The goal here is not necessarily to create a uniformity, because the more I went back to study today, the more I realize how important this book has been to my concept of my association with Israel. The more I realize that the vast majority of American Jews today, and I think the vast majority, quite frankly, of Israeli Jews in Israel, are not really thinking about Max Nordau or Theodor Herzl or Jabotinsky or any of the original thinkers. Even if they quote them and claim to speak in their voice, the chances that any of us have really sat down, really read, for example, Max Nordau's first speech to the Zionist Congress in Basel, right, to consider really very deeply the challenging words of Jabotinsky that led to the Beitar movement, that led to much of the nationalist movement that exists today in the State of Israel. In order to understand ourselves today, we must understand ourselves better from yesterday and the day before. In order to define Zionism today for ourselves and for our people around the world, we need to understand our history. And we need to understand fundamentally that there never really was a singular vision. That Herzl's vision of bringing together the various voices of European Jewry to consider the answer to the quote-unquote Jewish problem right? To answer the horrors of what happened in the Dreyfus affair, right? To do all of the things that Herzl did. Herzl's voice was not by any means the only one. It wasn't even close. There are so many, and so many who contributed actually remarkably important ideas that are very much a part of the body, the heart, the spirit of the current state of Israel, and at the very essence of the battles that are being fought in the streets as we speak for the future of the state of Israel and what it really ultimately stands for. And then, as I said, as an extra layer, us on the quote-unquote sidelines or at a distance, those of us living in the diaspora, caring deeply, calling ourselves in very clear terms Zionists, but feeling in many cases, especially these days, pushed to the periphery, or being told our opinion doesn't really matter because we don't live there and we don't vote there. And many of these ideas are not just fallacious ideas, they're dangerous ideas, because they were never really a part of the earliest part of the Zionist thinker, the one that says there will always have to be a relationship between the land of Israel and its diaspora. There has to be a partnership and an understanding that the state of Israel is not just a national homeland of the Jewish people. It is our essence. It speaks for us as a people in the world. And therefore, even if we don't vote, even if we aren't citizens, even if we don't serve in the army, our voices are not on the sidelines, nor should they be. Nor are they not important or essential even. In the end, one of the most telling things of the current author, current editor's words, I'm forgetting now his name. I'm just going to give me 1 second to look it up. He refers in the earliest part, in very stark terms, he says that in the early days, Israel was considered to be in many ways a salvation, right? A place that saved our people, saved our bodies, so to speak, as it were. In this case, he says at the end of one of his introductions that today, most diaspora Jews seek inspiration, not salvation from Israel. There is a very different kind of relationship in that way. Now, he's making this claim in 2018 when the book comes out. The recent wave of anti-Semitism, I know, has many people perhaps pushing back against that very broad statement. But he's not entirely incorrect either. Right? That our experience a lot of times in the diaspora world is we look to Israel to be the best of us, to be the inspiring place, the place that we go to and hold up and say, look what it is that we can do when we are allowed to be in our own land. All of the things that we most adore, we most care about, right? Those core pieces, all of that stuff is there. We're less generally concerned at this point about needing a place to run to, but much more in need of something other than what we are seeing in our current reality, right? Which is a society, a country that is on the verge of tearing itself in two. And so the question we come back to at the beginning, right, the one sort of tongue-in-cheek way that I connected my own birthday to Israel and all that stuff, and the question of gift-giving is, as I said, I think a lot of times our diaspora relationship to Israel is that kind of surface-level thing. That thing where we assume that all Israel really wants from us or needs from us is a demonstration of love, right? Bouquet of flowers, box of chocolates, nice card, right? Whatever equivalent there is of a very nice, thoughtful gift, but that one that still leaves us right on the receiving end feeling a little bit hollow because there's something else that we need beyond just that surface level stuff. We need a real acknowledgement of understanding, right? A lot of us for our birthdays, what we just want is for the world to acknowledge that it's important that we exist, right? And the best way, in my estimation, that we can really, seriously, not superficially, but genuinely show the state of Israel and its citizens that we do in fact care, that we do in fact love, that we are in fact Zionist, is precisely to learn more, to think more, to speak more, and to engage more. But we can't do it if we are reliant entirely on the almost, demagogic level of discourse around it from current popular speakers and talking heads. At the very least, if we're going to do that, we ought to spend at least a little bit of time and learn our history a little bit deeper. If you don't know the names Max Nordau, if you only know Herzl, and you don't know any of the other, and let me tell you, the list is 20 or 30 or 40 times more than that. Right now is 168
different perspectives in this most recent book. If you don't know at least the first stage, if not the second stage, then you can't possibly understand the third stage, right? Yair Lapid is 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 generations down the road, right? Benjamin Netanyahu is the same thing. They are modern manifestations of older ideas. So the only way that we can really understand why are they doing this constantly is because their forerunners were doing this constantly. The difference was that in those days there was a sort of tacit understanding that none of them were going to prevail over the other, and instead they were going to have to figure out a way to make the whole thing work, to have a country that is somehow or another a politically Zionist, a culturally Zionist, a religiously Zionist, a nationally Zionist reality. And that's the work. But it can't be done by proxy. It can't be done lazily. It can't be done by abdicating the responsibility to others or to the occasional lecture that we hear. Sometimes it is essential for us to get into our primary text and to learn them backwards and forwards so that we know when somebody tries to take advantage of us, to manipulate us, to use us to think or to act or to not think or act in a certain way, to tell us that love of Israel means shutting up. That is an unacceptable answer. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with the person sitting next to you. You don't have to agree with the prime minister or the head of the opposition. But you better have an opinion, and you better have something to say, and you better put our money where our mouth is, our energy where our mouth is. And we can't rely on the simple things anymore. It is an unacceptable gift, so to speak. So in 75 years, as we celebrate this wonderful, remarkable, miraculous country and everything that it can do, has done, and will do, we have to also really go that next step. We have to be beyond the guy who just gives a nice card or makes a nice phone call. Those are lovely things. Don't get me wrong, they're lovely things. Okay, but there is a next step, and that next step means first I got to understand who I am speaking to. Who am I gifting to? We need to understand the state of Israel in a deeper way than we have understood. We need to do more. And I believe that right now the time doesn't allow for the kind of complacency and, quite frankly, as I said, the kind of intellectual laziness that has pervaded this conversation for too long. So I wish the state of Israel, first and foremost, a very happy birthday from the very bottom of my heart. And my hope that I will be able to go back and visit again within the next year, because this is, unless I'm mistaken, is the longest stretch of my life where I haven't been there. At the same time, we ask of the birthday, girl, boy, whatever you want to associate with the land, that we have some work to do. So after all the celebrating is done, let's get back to that real deep thinking, that real deep learning, and pushing ourselves to be more than what we are currently. So with that, I wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom. And again, very happy birthday to the State of Israel. We'll have another way of doing that a little bit at the end of the service. So again, wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Also a reminder that we are counting our weeks until Shavuot, not too far in the future. So we're going to do Sfirat HaOmer, counting of the Omer, on page 570, 570. Hineni muchan umezuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel Sfirat HaOmer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al Sfirat HaOmer. Hayom 23 yom shehem 3 shavuot u'shnei yamim la'omer. Today marks 23 days, which is 3 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. I'll now invite you to turn with me to page 586 at the very bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabech. Aleinu L'Shabech L'Adon HaKol, Latet Gdula Liotzer Breshit, Shelo Hasanu Kegoye Ha'aratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishmechot Adama, Shelo Sama Chelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, V'anachnu Korim, U'mishtachavim U'modim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. We'll turn now to page 598 as we prepare to offer the Mourner's Kaddish for this evening. We think first of those who have passed in our community in recent months. Morty Schwatzky, Beverly Deshevsky, Sandy Greenwald, Dorothy Klein, Buddy Kossoff, David Lieberman, Norma Polsek, Marvin Schreier, Sandy Slip, Larry Wartor, Rita Weitzman, and Yael Zerdar. We also mark the art sites that occurred during the last week for Milton Axelrod, Stuart Lawrence Bell, Clara Fleischer, May Froman, Lillian Gluckman, Herman Golden, William Grossman, Teresa Jacoby, Evelyn Katz, Hyman Cohens, Estee Lauder, Herman Morris, Esther Oberman, Randolph Scott Racklin, Dorothy Rach, Carol Regan, Geraldine Rosen, Ethel Sanders, Lillian Saperstein, Vera Schaps, Elizabeth Schwab, Herman Schwartz, and Mo Slater. In addition to the names that I just read, if anyone else is saying Kaddish for anyone that we did not mention, you're welcome to add those names into the chat or simply to say them at home. And in addition to the names of those that we are remembering in our community, we also remember that immediately preceding Yom HaAtzmaut in Israel is Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. So we also offer this Mourner's Kaddish in remembrance of all of the lives given in defense of the State of Israel, and we hope and pray that in the future years the necessity will be less. But for now, we connect ourselves again to the State of Israel and to all of those who have lost their loved ones over the years fighting in defense of the State of Israel. I'll invite the mourners to join with me on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayichon u'b'yomechon u'b'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shalama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Shabbat shalom, everyone. So the one thing I did forget, and thankfully our wonderful Shelley, I believe, texted me the answer, is all the announcements, of which there are many and important ones. So please do bear with me as best as you can. So first is, for those that are interested, Shabbat services tomorrow will have an in-person component, so anyone who wants to join me can do so at the Old Whalers Church beginning at 9:30 tomorrow. Also a reminder that Torah study will be on Zoom at 12 o'clock. Reminder again, next Shabbat, our first back in the temple. I know many of you have RSVP'd to tell us you're coming, which is really helpful. If any of you have not done that and are planning on coming, please do let us know, because we really do have to plan accordingly, which is important. But just a reminder, those that are able to join us, you can just come for the service at 6 o'clock. But we hope if you're able to join us at the Old Whalers Church as we plan our procession of Torahs and various other important items down from the Old Whalers Church, back parking lot, over to the synagogue, to our beautiful temple. Just a reminder again, for anybody who is planning to do that, you're probably best, if you can, parking closer to the temple and then walking over to the church. It's about a 7-minute walk or so. If any of you are wanting to participate but have, for any number of reasons, a physical limitation and you're concerned, please let us know in this week. We will do everything we can to possibly make this as accessible and involved as is humanly possible. And certainly by the time we get to the temple, anybody who needs to get access to the temple will be able to do so. But please do let us know again if you're planning to come, because it will just help us for planning purposes. So again, that's 5 o'clock next week. And then after services, our first festive Kiddush, our first Oneg in a really long time, which is really amazing, And then Saturday, we have in the morning a wonderful bat mitzvah, Chloe, who will be called to the Torah. And in the afternoon, a wonderful Ben Kriegsman, who will be called to the Torah again in Mincha. So we have, in our first Shabbat, right, all of these wonderful things taking place, which is just really lovely. Also, just a reminder, if you didn't get my email earlier this week, I have been very graciously and generously given the opportunity to speak as part of the Old Whaler service on Sunday. Pastor Remkes was very kind to offer that. And so I will be doing that, understandably, short notice. No, it may not be possible for many of you to be there. But if you're in the area and you can, if nothing else, come in to meet, some of these wonderful people who, our staff has gotten to know over the last few years, but you may not have had as much interaction with. They're really lovely people, and they are preparing a oneg of their own sort for us afterwards. So a nice chance for a certain amount of friendship and fellowship. And as I said to everyone there, this friendship is a long-lasting one. And just because we won't be in the building, we'll be right down the street, and we'll keep building upon these wonderful things that we've created together over the last couple of years. Let's see. Also, tomorrow, Thursday, May 4th, 2 o'clock, is the in-person tour of the Sassoon exhibit at the Jewish Museum. For those who are not able to participate in person, there is a virtual tour at 7 o'clock. Again, that's Thursday, May 4th at 2 is the in-person, and 7 o'clock is the virtual tour. Registration is required. And I think those were all of my major... Oh, yes, one other very important thing. If over the last few years we lent you a Siddur, a prayer book, we would love to be able to continue to do that. However, we realized in the next, Shabbat in particular, we may not have as many books as we thought we did for the number of people who are coming. So some of you may have them. If you can, best thing to do is bring them with you Friday night, and we'll certainly help anybody that plans on being more, distant and needs another copy. We'll figure that out. But if you can bring them with you, that would be extremely helpful. And especially if you could tell us that you're planning to do that, would be even the most helpful. But birthday boy can only ask for so many things from his people. So I'll just keep it at please bring it if you can. So. With that, just a couple of other normal, regular week stuff. Monday, Nida Mitzvah, 11:30. 12 o'clock is my Heschel class. Hebrew School at 3:30. Social Justice online at 5 o'clock. Wednesday, Hebrew School at 3:30. And Friday, my Siddur class, 9:15 as well. Ellen Ruby has a hand up. So, Ellen, I'm going to give you the power to unmute. You can tell us what... Did I miss Rosh Chodesh?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, did you say that Rosh Chodesh meets this Sunday?
As a matter of fact, I didn't see it on my list here, so I'm glad. I figured that's what it was. So this Sunday, 2 o'clock?
At 2 o'clock at Marilyn Zaretsky's house.
Okay,
And-
good.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't know that address, contact the office. Let's not say it on the internet. But definitely, if you could be at 2 o'clock, Rosh Chodesh. And thank you, Ellen. Appreciate that. All right, good. For those that are on the Zoom, by the way, you'll forgive me. I'm family is waiting to do a birthday dinner, but we'll kibitz for a few minutes afterwards for our virtual oneg. But I thought as a close tonight before we do Kiddush, as we have always done in the Shabbat closest to Yom Ha'atzmaut, is to close with Hatikva. And if not for simply the obvious act, one of the other reasons in which we commit to this idea of what Hatikva represents, it is Hatikva, right? It is the hope. So for whatever concern there might be, whatever challenges there may be that need to be addressed, the hope is ever present. It is the fundamental core of what the state of Israel represents. So even amongst disagreement, even to the point of some of the absurdity of which we see today, this is the core text, right? This is the primary text that needs our attention more than ever. Don't ever give up on the hope. Okay? Join with me on page 678 if you know it. Again, page 678 all the way at the very bottom of the page, or probably any other number of ways to find it online as well. Kol hod balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulfatei mizrach kadima Ayin letzion tzofia O lo avda tikvatenu. התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון מירושלים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון מירושלים. I'll invite you, if you have a Kiddush cup handy, we're going to turn to page 123 for Kiddush. You're on your own for Motzi this week, that's for sure. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mohorei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavahanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilahanu zikaron lemahaseh v'reishit ki hu yahom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki bahanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And again, anybody who wants to stick around on our Zoom is welcome to do so. Otherwise, we'll say goodnight to our streaming friends. And services tomorrow again